and I feel this sort of grief come up out of me. And just like everybody's silent, I think that Gwendolyn is sobbing and Robyn's trying to console her. This grief comes out of me and I wailed. And that's when I think became really aware that this situation has gone down, and it's sort of unreconcilable. I just don't know what to do.
Hi friends, it's Harry from Sister Wives Unmasked. Welcome back to the channel. After 22 long episodes this season, episodes where we watched Kody Brown and Robyn attempt to rewrite history, we've reached a moment where the truth couldn't stay hidden anymore. Throughout the season, they filmed scenes as though they happened before Garrison's passing, carefully crafting a narrative that painted Kody as a father on a path to reconciliation. They tried to give him a redemption arc, showing him rebuilding relationships with his children, softening his image. But this week, it all came crashing down. It was awkward. It was eye-opening. It was heartbreaking. Honestly, it was infuriating. I felt crushed for the family members who were closest to Garrison, the ones who spoke to him every day, who loved him deeply, who were actively trying to support him through his struggles. This episode was hard to watch. Garrison, for the entire season, had been erased. His presence vanished. No one mentioned him. No one acknowledged him. And yet, one of his final texts sent to Kody, some TLC producers, and a few family members spoke volumes. He wrote, "I want to hate you for the good times, but I can't. I miss those days." That message went unanswered by Kody. There was no response. When the unthinkable happened, Kody didn't show up at the scene. And later, to find out just how much say he had in planning the funeral, how his wishes were prioritized despite abandoning his son, it was almost too much to process. When a child chooses to go no contact with a parent, it's not a decision made lightly. Garrison was pushed away, made to feel unwelcome, belittled, shamed. Kody actively worked to exclude him, at one point demanding Garrison be evicted from the house. He labeled Garrison a narcissist, called him a jerk, and made it clear he wanted nothing to do with him. In last season's tell-all, Kody even said he'd punch anyone who brought up Robyn. Together, he and Robyn had their daughter Mykelti call Garrison just to tell him they were cutting him out of the family Christmas gift exchange and wouldn't be celebrating with him, or with anyone outside their immediate unit. Garrison was hurt, deeply. He shared how he was mocked by Kody for buying a car, for purchasing a house. When he fixed up an RV and lived in it near Janelle's place, Kody ridiculed him on the show, saying he'd never be capable of it. Their relationship was non-existent, estranged by Kody's choice, solidified by Garrison's boundaries. Yet in the end, Kody got to dictate what happened. And that is what made me so angry. The people who should have had a say were the ones who truly raised Garrison, those who loved him, stood by him, and cared for him through the good and the bad. To see Kody allowed to step into the spotlight, to play the victim, to act as though he was feeling grief, it felt like an insult to Garrison's life. Honestly, I don't know if Kody even felt real grief. So many of his words in this episode rang hollow. Sitting by a fire with Robyn, he told her he realized he should have done things differently, that he thought he had more time, that he should have spent more time with Garrison, that he needed to reconcile and change how he handled his relationships. But here we are over a year later, a year and 2 months, and nothing has changed. If anything, things have gotten worse between Kody and his remaining children. In Garrison's final days, he was angry at his father. He reached out. He sent that text. No one responded, no one, except Janelle. Her pain in this episode was palpable. I could feel it. And honestly, part of me was frustrated she had to go through this on camera for TLC. Maybe it felt easier for her not to fight Kody over the funeral plans, to not create even more conflict. But if it had been me, and this is just my truth, I would have shut Kody completely out of the process. He wouldn't have been invited to the funeral at all. And then to see that they brought Garrison back to Wyoming to be buried near Kody's father, at the family ranch, it felt so strange. Janelle had a complicated relationship with Kody's dad, and so did many of the kids. It just didn't sit right that they chose to lay Garrison to rest where Kody came from, not where Garrison built his life. Sure, he was born in Wyoming, but that wasn't his home anymore. I'm overwhelmed with so many emotions here. My heart aches for the OG3, for the women who clearly loved Garrison and were visibly grieving. And I'm angry that Kody was given a platform to whitewash what really happened. It's as if TLC doesn't want to acknowledge the harm Kody caused, and that's just so frustrating. Several siblings shared their experiences on camera. Gabriel, who found his brother, spoke candidly, not immediately after, but in time. Gabriel has always been someone who felt things deeply, even if he didn't show it openly. Everyone in the family knows that in Garrison's final hours, he spent time on the phone with Janelle. She shared how he had been struggling with alcohol, how depression and anxiety weighed heavily on him. Janelle spoke about how, despite everything, she had tried so hard to help Garrison. She had offered support again and again, but at a certain point, it felt like there was nothing more she could do. She, along with Hunter and Logan, would often team up, checking in on him regularly, trying to get him to respond, to engage. There had been other nights like the one she described, nights where he would make concerning statements about not wanting to continue on. While she didn't explicitly say he talked about ending his life, it was heavily implied. Usually those nights would pass. He would fall asleep, wake up the next day, and eventually reach out again, reassuring everyone he was okay. Of course, we now know that it was Gabriel who found him. Watching Gabriel talk about his brother was devastating. He spoke with such raw honesty about the kind of person Garrison was, how he was a kind, inclusive soul who always went out of his way to make others feel comfortable and valued. Gabriel said that Garrison genuinely cared about the people in his life, and that, to him, that was what it meant to be a true gentleman. That comment hit hard. It felt like a clear, pointed message aimed directly at Kody. For years, Kody talked endlessly about how he was raising his sons to be gentlemen, about how they needed to be courteous and respectful. As recently as last week's episode, Janelle even mentioned how Kody often emphasized that same expectation. So for Gabriel to say that about Garrison here, it undeniably felt like he was saying, "My brother was more of a gentleman than you ever were, Dad." It breaks my heart to think about it. Garrison, the one who was kind, who was compassionate, was beaten down emotionally to the point where he felt he wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy of love, and that maybe the world was better without him. And let's be clear, that's the result of an illness, not a choice. The moments that have stuck with me most from those few days were at the funeral home with Janelle. I remember not knowing what to say to anyone, other than simply, "I'm so sorry." Janelle talked about Garrison as a child, how much he loved campfires, traveling, and gazing at the stars. Gabriel remembered his brother's kindness and inclusiveness, how deeply he felt, even if he didn't always express it outwardly. Madison shared how she had tried to help him, encouraging him to move to North Carolina to escape the toxic environment in Flagstaff. You could feel the unspoken guilt in her words, like she was quietly wondering whether things might have been different if they'd succeeded in getting him out sooner. Christine also spoke at the funeral. She reminisced about Garrison as a little boy and expressed all the love she had for him. One line she shared brought her to tears, a quote from a movie about how when someone's gone, you can see them in the stars. I can't remember the exact wording, but it was powerful and moving. While all of these people who truly knew Garrison, were sharing their memories of who he was and the light he brought to their lives, Kody said nothing. Not a word about who his son was. He didn't say, "My son was intelligent. My son was compassionate. My son was determined. My son served in the National Guard." There was nothing. It was as though he was so disconnected from Garrison's life at the time of his death that he couldn't speak to his character at all. He didn't know him. He couldn't even acknowledge the struggles Garrison faced, the alcohol dependency, the depression, the anxiety, because he simply wasn't present for any of it. Instead, all Kody did throughout the entire episode was talk about himself, about how Garrison's death impacted him, about how he felt regret, about how he thought he'd have more time to reconcile things. It was staggering to watch such disconnection, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Kody didn't know his son. When you lose a child, and you've truly been in their life, you know what they've loved, what they've feared, what they've overcome. You know their triumphs and their struggles. Kody knew none of it. That's what I walked away with. And seeing TLC give Kody this platform once again, to reshape the narrative and center himself, made me angrier than I can explain. Janelle later shared that Garrison's struggles with alcohol began during COVID. Before that, he was never a drinker. He didn't like alcohol, didn't even like the taste. But something shifted that year, and it consumed him. She explained that they had offered him all the love, all the support, all the resources they could. He wasn't alone. It wasn't for lack of help. But something had broken inside him. Janelle spoke carefully, saying she didn't know exactly what happened to trigger that decline. But I think many of us, viewers and family alike, can read between the lines. Maybe she didn't want to outright point fingers at Kody. Maybe she was just being mindful of her words. But it's clear the family uses during COVID as a kind of shorthand as the moment everything fell apart. That's when Kody fractured the family, created divisions, and alienated his children. That was when Kody tried to kick Garrison out, blamed him for damaging his marriage with Janelle, called him a narcissist, got furious with him over his relationship with Robyn, and then, for 3 long years, Kody demanded apologies from his children instead of trying to repair anything. It was the way Kody painted Garrison during that time. You're not welcome in our house. You can't come over for Christmas. You're not safe. He cast him as the villain. That's what I think Janelle is really saying when she says during COVID. She's not spelling it out directly, maybe to protect Kody, or to protect the family, or even to protect Garrison's memory. But the subtext is clear. In their final text messages, Janelle and Garrison had been talking about how heartbroken and angry he was about his relationship with his dad. He'd come across an old photo of Kody and, for a moment, thought it was recent. When he realized it was from long ago, it made him even angrier. I get why they don't want to openly say he was upset about the show and about Kody, but that was what weighed on him, at least that night. And the truth is, alcohol doesn't help with depression or anxiety. It makes it worse. It's a depressant. It robs your brain of dopamine and leaves you feeling even lower than before. It intensifies suicidal ideation and deepens the heaviness. If he hadn't been drinking that night, maybe it would have turned out differently. Maybe it wouldn't have spiraled. I think Janelle knows exactly what happened. I just think she's holding back from saying it outright. I wish they would say it. Maybe they will in future episodes. Maybe this is just the first wave of grief, the first step in processing everything. Because we know that things with Kody didn't improve. Robyn didn't step up to help mend things. No one got the chance to make amends or say goodbye properly. There was that scene as staged as it was with the fire. Let's be real, it was winter when Garrison passed away. There was snow on the ground in Flagstaff for days. That scene wasn't filmed right after he died. It was clearly a setup. But still, the moment where Kody said, "I need to do something different," felt genuine for a second. It sounded like he was almost about to say he wanted to rebuild relationships with his kids. And then Robyn cut in and said, "Well, that's what everyone says. They wish they had more time." It felt like she was dismissing his moment of self-reflection, telling him, "You don't need to change. That's just grief talking." And it made me wonder, if Kody had anyone else to talk to besides Robyn, would he actually make an effort to mend things? If she wasn't constantly steering him away from reconnecting, framing the kids outside of her immediate circle as the bad ones, maybe he would. But Robyn has always positioned herself and her children as the only safe, loyal family, while pushing the others out. She couldn't even pretend to care convincingly. It was obvious. Her attempt to show emotion felt hollow and performative. And knowing how much Garrison resented her made it all the more infuriating to watch her take up space in these conversations. Why did she even get a chance to speak about him? I kept thinking, if Robyn had never entered the family, would Kody's relationship with Garrison have ended like this? Would things be as fractured with his other kids? I don't know for sure, but I do believe it wouldn't have gotten this bad. Robyn has fueled so much of the division. Yes, Kody is a narcissist, but so is she, and together they've isolated and alienated so many of the other kids. Even when Kody had a sliver of an opportunity to reflect and maybe make a change, Robyn shut it down. Everyone does that. A subtle reminder that he didn't have to change. Later, she even seemed to guilt-trip him when he talked about wanting to take Garrison's urn back to Wyoming. The whole scene was awkward and unsettling. Kody wondered aloud, how am I going to do this? How do I face the rest of my life? Every holiday, every birthday, all the frustrations from COVID, and everything else suddenly seems so unimportant. I'm just sad. Sad about what could have been. He mentioned going to pick up Garrison's urn from his brother and said that when they went to Wyoming, he just wanted to take him home. By the end of the episode, I felt overwhelmed with anger toward Kody and deep disgust toward both him and Robyn. Why were they being given this platform? Why were they allowed to sit there and talk about all the pain they supposedly felt over missing birthdays, holidays, Christmases, when in reality, Kody hadn't even seen Garrison at Christmas in 3 or 4 years. He had chosen to stay away. He had chosen to sever those connections. They weren't going to spend the holidays together that next year, and Kody always stopped short of admitting the real reason why. He never owns up to the fact that it was his behavior. His abuse, his verbal attacks, his psychological manipulation, his narcissism, his ego, his constant anger. All of that is what caused the rift. It feels hollow because he never says, I did this. Instead, he keeps repeating, what if? What if? What if? But the truth is, if this tragedy hadn't happened, he wouldn't be saying, what if? He wouldn't have cared. He wouldn't have reached out. And even now, after all of it, if he really cared, he'd have relationships with his kids today, but he doesn't. He barely speaks to any of them. Hunter doesn't talk to him. Logan doesn't talk to him. Gabriel doesn't talk to him. Savannah doesn't talk to him. Janelle's kids, none of them have a relationship with him. Even McKelty, his most loyal daughter, doesn't speak to him anymore because of how he's acted since Garrison's death. He said he was going to change. He said he'd make more time and prioritize relationships. He didn't. Instead, he made Garrison's death about himself. And if all of this, is what the family is referring to when they explain why they don't talk to him anymore, I understand. Completely. When Robyn sat there and talked about what could have been, it sounded like she was saying that if only Garrison had apologized, things could have been different. But really, it was the other way around. If Kody had apologized, if he'd understood that what his son needed was an apology, recognition of the pain caused, maybe Garrison could have had a different life. Maybe if Kody hadn't been so verbally abusive. Maybe if he had been capable of managing relationships with all of his kids, not just focusing solely on Robyn and her children. Maybe if Robyn hadn't spent 3 years playing the victim, making Garrison out to be a bully toward her. If this is how they acted at the funeral, then yeah, it makes perfect sense why no one speaks to them anymore. And all of this, it's performative. It's for the cameras. Days after Garrison died, Kody and Robyn were spotted in Scottsdale, out at a steakhouse, eating and laughing with their 3 older kids. Meanwhile, at the start of this episode, Kody talked about how he needed to console his children, but it was Gwendolyn who had to ask to come over. His 3 oldest kids didn't even go to the funeral. It's fake. All of it is fake. Why did they get so much of this episode? Why are we spending so much time on their version of things? Why do Garrison's abusers, because that's what they were, get a platform to play the victims? If this is the truth behind why the family has cut them off, I completely get it now. They'll never change. And they're twisting Garrison's death to be about themselves. Not once have they acknowledged that he was in pain, struggling, dealing with depression and anxiety. They can't, or won't, recognize how their behavior made all of that worse. The closest Kody came to admitting any fault was saying, "Oh, the COVID stuff was just so unimportant." That's as near as he got to recognizing that he contributed to Garrison's spiraling mental health. So what did you think of this video and this episode? Were you upset? Angry? Frustrated? I just feel heartbroken for the family members who truly loved Garrison. They should have been the ones with the final word, not Kody. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.